Business and Tech campus of the Westbrook Walnut Grove High School. I'm Daryl Herdlichka, and I've been a member of the Wilder pageant here in Walnut Grove for 15 years now. I've played the mayor, the minister, and now I'm the Norwegian. You're probably watching from your dugout of your covered wagon. We're excited to bring you Laura's Prairie Summer, a 6-part miniseries over the next 3 weekends. We have a mixture of live and recorded scenes, special guests, and more. This is episode 1. Through the magic of very fast horses and digital bites of hay, we've traveled to both ends of the continental U.S. to bring you Dale Cockrell from the east, somewhere in beautiful Vermont, and Dean Butler from the far west in sunny California. Pat and Patty are tired, so we'll give them a rest and sit down to visit for a spell with these two well-known guests. Welcome, Dale and Dean.
Hi, Daryl. Glad to be here.
Dale, tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Well, I'm a musicologist. It's a funny word. It means I study American music, really. And when my son was about 8 years old, I was reading to him in bed. And we picked up the Little House series and started reading that front to cover. One of the reasons we picked it up was if you start in on a series, it takes care of what you're going to read next. And at that point, that was a kind of welcome attribute. So I'm reading through this book and I'm going, oh, Pa Ingalls is a fiddler. Isn't that interesting? And look at all this music. And every time I'd run across a tune, I'd try to sing it if I knew it. If I didn't, I'd make something up. And we continued to read through it. And after a while, I was just astonished at the amount of music making that was going on in this. And I knew enough about it to know that it was somewhat historically accurate. And I thought, this is a real ethnography of the way music functioned in an American family in the 19th century American frontier life.
Right.
So after we read through them, it was Christmas time, I sat down with the books and I kind of went through and tried to mark the tunes. Sometimes it's difficult to find them. And came up with a count of about 120 songs that had been integrated into these books by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And I was astonished at that. And I thought, gee, it's really too bad that somebody hasn't sat down and made recordings of these, because as Sam and I went through them, we wanted to pop a cassette into the recorder at that point and listen to these tunes. So that idea kind of floated around for a couple of years. And at that point, I was teaching at Vanderbilt University, which is in Nashville. And if you know anything about Nashville, you might know that they make music there. And at one point, I thought, you live in Nashville, why don't we make some recordings of these things? So I got to talking to people and talked to lawyers and went on Music Row, and to make a very long story short, finally decided to establish Pa's Fiddle Recordings, LLC, and got in touch with some of the leading musicians in Nashville at the time. A good friend of mine was the producer. And we, over the course of about 6 years, made 4 recordings of those songs, sometimes selections. One of them actually is all of the music in Little House on the Prairie, the book. And they sold quite well, and there were people were interested in it. It came time to retire, and I turned to my good friend Dean Butler, and I said, Dean, why don't you take this project and go? And Dean said, Dean?
I said, well, actually, I think after you told me, I think you really laid it out in a way that you knew I would find irresistible. And, we had just done Pa's Fiddle, the Music of America together. And that's a great story, how that happened. But yeah, so I've taken it over now. But Dale did the heavy lifting on this. Dale's scholarship, his commitment to it. This was, I know from producing, this is never easy. It doesn't just fall together. There's a lot of effort and time that goes into it. And these are really beautiful recordings. The Pa's Fiddle recordings are absolutely gorgeous. And so I just love the association with the music. It's meant a lot to me.
Well, I'm quite proud of it, actually. I think the recordings also are just wonderful. Some incredible musicians and some incredible songs. It turns out that there are 127 songs embedded in those books.
Oh, wow.
And I was actually able to capture recapture 126 of them. So I don't know what the Red Heifer is. So if anybody's listening out there and they know a tune called the Red Heifer, Dean wants to know.
Yeah. Yes, we want to do the third album.
We need to do the next album.
Yeah, exactly. So, or the fourth album in this case.
All right. Well, Dean, you're, of course, well known for the iconic TV show. Please tell us about your work and your current projects.
Well, I mean, Little House has been a huge part of my life since I came into it back in 1979. And I never could have imagined that, that 41 years later, in September, it will be 41 years that I've been associated with the program on the air. And it shows no signs of slowing down. And I can say that really virtually every professional opportunity that I have had since then has somehow had a connection to Little House, that someone either loved the show, knew of the show, respected that I had been involved with it.
Right.
Whatever it was, it's just been an amazing thing to be a part of. I transitioned out of acting in the late 1990s, and so I got involved in more reality-based programming and sports specifically. And for the last 9 years, I've been making a show for Golf Channel, NBC's Golf Channel, called Faraday, which is starring a gentleman named David Faraday, who is a very quirky and interesting Northern Irishman who has a very unique take on the world and on the game of golf. And it's just been a joy working with him.
All right. Are either of you planning on making more Laurel Ingalls Wilder productions or music or stories? You said if you can find the Red Heifer, you might do the fourth album?
Sure.
Well, it was, for me at least, it was more of a project than just the recordings. Eventually, I should have brought it here. Eventually, I brought out a critical edition of all 127 songs sponsored by the National Endowment for the Humanities. And from that, I've extracted 7 songbooks corresponding to the books that have music in them, and they're available. They're inexpensive. So this is something for parents, grandparents, and their children to buy and to go through they're book by book.
Okay.
So you can get These Happy Golden Years, and it's got all of the tunes in These Happy Golden Years. So it's also turned for me, at least, into something like a scholarly project as well as just a music-making project.
Okay.
And then Dean and I worked together on Pa's Fiddle America's Music, too, for PBS.
Oh, that's right.
Dean, maybe you want to tell us something about that?
Well, it was just, it was a magical experience. And what's so interesting is you come into an idea like this, and let's go back to the beginning of this. I met Dale at Laurapalooza back in 2010, which took place in Mankato, Minnesota. And I was presenting a documentary that I had just finished making and was looking to get some feedback from Laura aficionados. And I heard Dale's talk about the Pa's Fiddle music, and I was just absolutely blown away. One, that this music existed, and really the way Dale spoke about it, which was poetic. And I cornered him at lunch and said, Dale, we have to put this music on television. And really, that's how it began. We just set out on this journey, and it took 2 years to get the show shot.
Okay.
And it was a fascinating process of selling an idea into PBS and then having to evolve the idea based on conditions, the availability of talent, budgets, all these practical things that come into play when you're trying to make a program. And we eventually ended up with what we ended up with. And I think, given all conditions, I think we did a really good job. I think that
it's a great show. It's a great program.
Well, the performances are lovely, and the artists were very willing to step in, and I think we got one of the last Randy Travis was so wonderful in this, and and I think Randy shortly thereafter had issues, health issues, and I don't know that Randy's able to sing anymore, but we have two beautiful performances of his.
All right.
It was really a special thing, and a lot of people came together and gave something of themselves to make this happen, and I think that's the sign of a project that has some synergy. That synergy of excitement and interest was really one of the driving forces that allowed it to happen, because it certainly wasn't the money that we were paying people. There was really no money. It was done on a shoestring,
right,
but it was done with a lot of love.
Yeah.
All right, well, it looks like the horses are hitched up and ready to travel, so thank you both very much for being here tonight and being a part of this. Dale, Dean.
Thanks, Daryl.
Thanks, Daryl, for having us.
Thank you for time. And now we'll just giddy up out of here, and we'll take a short stop to fix a squeaky wheel and tell you about the online More Than Laura Nelly Challenge and the Pa Lookalike Contest.